Welcome to the Delight Your Marriage podcast, the show where you hear from amazing and inspiring wives sharing their struggles, triumphs, and advice for this journey called marriage. Here's your host, Bella Rose.
Hi there, and welcome. This is the Delight Your Marriage podcast, and I'm really grateful that you just joined today, that you got a chance to dip into what we're chatting about. So first off, I want to share with you that I'm really excited because I've received some emails that I just think are so exciting. One is from a husband that has reached out to me many times over the years that I've been doing DYM, and he actually has let me know that was able to sit down with his wife and share a podcast with her. And by God's grace, it moved something in her that caused her to actually take him by the hand and apologize for so much. And by God's grace, they were able to talk about the good old days of their marriage and their moving to a better spot. And not only that, he started going to church, and it's just really cool to hear that God is redeeming their marriage and bringing him closer to Jesus, which is really the vision and the mission for DYM. So yeah, that's really exciting. I'm so grateful when marriages move forward just by listening to the podcast. Even more so, by God's grace, when they get a chance to actually get on a clarity call and end up working with me as a client. Like, God has done amazing things in a very short amount of time. I'm actually working with a wife right now who starting off, their marriage had zero affection. Like, they actually wouldn't touch during the day, and really the only time that they had physical contact was during intimacy, and then he would leave and go sleep somewhere else. And she just felt really lonely and sad about this pattern that they had. But by God's grace, through working with me, literally just the third week, I think on our fourth session, she told me things had just transformed, that he's literally now wanting to spend time having physical touch, spending every evening together doing what she even wants to do. And he made sure she had a really special evening together with him. And when we get on the call, she's just literally just brimming ear to ear. Like, she is so excited. So I really want that for you. I want you to get in a place where you're doing God's will in this life. And by God's grace, I've walked so many wives through that, and literally coaching with them transforms their marriage, transforms their husbands. Because once you understand where a husband is actually motivated and how he's motivated and how he's designed, then you can work alongside that. You can work with that to actually cause him to be the man that you want him to be, the man that God wants him to be, and the man that supports you and loves you and allows you to feel full and fulfilled to do God's work in your life and your heart as well. Awesome. Well, jump on a free clarity call with me or my team. You can go to www.dym.as.me, and you can have a free 40-minute call to really uncover the obstacles of what's going on in your marriage. And the catch is that if I think I can help you get there, I don't think it's for everyone, but I think so many women have worked with me and have giant transformations by God's grace, that I'm going to share with you what my program is all about. And potentially, again, I might not invite everyone. I don't invite everyone, but I might invite you to be part of the program so that you can see those results as well. All right, fantastic. Well, I'm excited to dive in. Let's do it. Fantastic. Well, the thing that I work with women on kind of from the very beginning is I ask them to rate their marriage from a 0 to 10. Where are you right now in terms of your marital safety, your marital bliss? What 10 as being the most amazing marriage ever, and you can share everything, and you're just amazing partners, amazing marriage, parents that you can really confide in each other. Where are you on that scale? And so if you're something like a 3 or a 4, you would act differently than you would if you were an 8 or a 9. So your marriage is, something I work with women to be strategic, that you don't have to just share openly everything and anything that's on your mind, because if you are a 3 or 4 or less than that, a 0, a 1, a 2, I work with women who their husbands are having affairs. Like, they are not going to share. They're not going to be open with their hearts with what's going on for them the same way a wife would be if she's an 8, 9, 10. And she shouldn't be. So you need to know where you are in your marriage right now. And then from there, you can then, again, have that strategic mindset. This is hard to do, okay? Because we as women, we have emotions. We have desires. We have expectations in our marriage that he's going to honor us and cherish us and hold us just literally like he vowed he would do on our wedding day. And those are not unreasonable expectations. In fact, he committed to those. So a lot of women, their response to him defying those vows is for women to, essentially go ballistic, like when they find out about a trespass over those commitments. And their response is just hugely emotional, hugely destructive. And I say this with a lot of empathy, because I don't want you to think that it's no small thing to find out your husband is addicted to pornography, or find out that, he's been sleeping with someone else, or emotionally having an affair with someone else. That's really, really big stuff. So I hope you don't think that I'm minimizing that. A lot of people literally go through PTSD because of those situations. But what I'm encouraging and inviting you to do is to respond to a situation where you are a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3, even all the way up to a 6, let's say, for you to be strategic rather than, sharing everything. Because what I have seen is that if you are strategic when you're at a 0, a 1, a 2, if you're strategic in those zones, slowly, it's going to become a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6. And you continue to be strategic, it'll get to be a 7, a 8, a 9. And then you can be more open about your feelings. And then you can start to melt some of the hard shell, the hard covering around your heart. All right? But recognize that it is up to you to guard your heart when it's not safe in your marriage. Just because you should be able to trust him, because he has those marriage vows, doesn't mean that he gets to have your trust. If he doesn't deserve your trust, he doesn't get to have it. If he doesn't deserve your heart, he doesn't get to have it. Now think about your situation. Does he deserve your heart? Does he deserve to get all of you? And if it's not a safe space for you guys, then he doesn't. You have to guard your heart. You cannot put your pearls before swine. That's what Jesus says. What you need to do is guard your heart, and what you need to do is be strategic. What is going to motivate my husband to change? Is it going to motivate my husband to tell him all the things he's not doing for me and what he should be doing? Is that going to make him want to change? It's not. Let me just answer very clearly. It is not. So if that's a pattern that you have, you need to break it. You need to not be telling him all the things that he's wrong for doing. And instead, you need to be strategic. What are the things that are going to motivate him to change? Right? So things that are going to motivate him to change are you pick out the glimmers of the goodness in him, the good things he's doing. You pick out those glimmers. You notice the glimmers. You appreciate the glimmers. You give him compliments about those glimmers. Even if they seem like nothing, and even if they seem like, oh, he took the children to soccer practice, no big deal. He should do that. And then you probably heap plenty more shoulds on him, whether it's in your own mind or you say it out loud. You should be actually playing soccer with the kids. You should be practicing with the kids. You should be, having, spending time with them so I can go, hang out with some girlfriends and get some time off. Like, you should want to be with your children. Like, maybe those are the things that you're thinking in your heart or saying to him out loud. And what that does is that repels him from doing it. So what that tells him is, oh, I'm not a good enough parent. Okay, why try? It's discouraging. It makes him not want to do those things. So in the midst, you want to be strategic and you want to say, gosh, thank you so much for taking the kids to soccer. That meant so much to them and it means so much to me. Clearly you care about them and you want what's best for them. What that does is it motivates him. That makes him want to change. That makes him have an identity to defend. A reputation to defend. It makes him live into that. It makes it a self-fulfilling prophecy. Suddenly he's like, oh yeah, I am a good father. And then he becomes more and more of a good father. And this is not manipulation. It's honesty, even though you might want far more than that. Where he is worth acknowledging and is worth commending and complimenting. And you don't need to say the gap between where you see he is and where you think he should be. That's not strategic. That's not going to move you guys forward at all. Now, if you're at a 9 or a 10, you're going to approach your marriage completely differently. You might be more open, though loving and kind, about some of these things. You might say things like, honey, I'm so grateful that, you're taking the kids to soccer. It's so wonderful. And, I was thinking there's this opportunity to do like a specific practice day with them. And I'd really love for you to do that. If that's something you could, I don't know. And so what that does is that's respectful, that's strategic, all those things. But it's coming from the realization that you guys are in a really good spot. So you can make suggestions like that. But if you're not, all you're going to limit yourself to is just positivity. Because what you need to do is infuse your marriage with positivity. You want to fill. You want good blood between the two of you. You don't want bad blood. You want good. So then when you get to the level 5, 6, 7, then you can be strategic at that level. But in the beginning, in terms of the quote honesty that women feel like they need to share, that's not going to be helpful for you guys. It's not going to be helpful for you to share all the shoulds and the emotions and share your true feelings and your true heart. That's not going to be helpful for him to hear. And at the same time, it's also going to be devastating when he doesn't heed your emotions. Because if you're at that low of a space, it doesn't matter how many times you cry or the desperation you feel on the inside when you're, arguing with him, he won't care because he's feeling the same things inside. He feels hurt and angry. So don't expect your husband to respond in a level that he's not at. Don't expect him to act like a 9 or a 10 when you guys are at a 3 or a 4. So what you need to do is infuse your marriage with positivity now. You need to commit to complimenting him. I work with the women I work with one-on-one. A lot of times this is just the foundation, right? We're just like, okay, wherever you are right now, we need positivity. So do not argue. Right now, foundation being peace. And compliment where he is right now. Figure out his strengths and commend them over and over and over again. 3 every single day. And that includes sexually. Where does he drive you wild? Where are you grateful? Even if it's just, I'm so grateful you desire me, honey. Like maybe he has a really high sex drive and maybe you don't want it at all. Okay, right now, my gosh, isn't it great that he's pursuing you rather than some stranger? That's a good thing. So how can you commend that? And I work with women to literally get them to a place of craving sex. It's a really wonderful experience where they go from something that's a chore, a duty, something they hate doing, to get them to a place where they actually crave it with their husbands. He becomes a much more joyful man. And she becomes much more connected and intimate and safe in her marriage bed. So anyway, what I encourage you to do is to guard your heart. Don't let yourself be vulnerable to pain and hurt and heartache, because that is going to make things worse. Because if you do get hurt, if you do have that pain, you're going to respond in a hurt way. But if you remain a dignified woman, if you look at your marriage wisely and you respond in such a way strategically, then you have the more objective way of saying, okay, how do I change this? How can this transform? And so what I want to say is you are not, quote, honest with all your feelings. A lot of women get this completely confused. They think, well, I'm being dishonest if I don't share everything that I'm thinking or feeling. I'm being disingenuous. I'm not being authentic. And I'm like, well, you probably don't share with your husband everything that goes on in the bathroom, and I'm not talking about your makeup. You probably don't share those things. You're not open about those things. Why? Because it's very unsexy. It's not attractive. He's not going to want to hear about those things. It doesn't matter what level you're at, 9 or 10. You are not going to share those things. Okay, so what about this other aspect that's actually far more important, that's going to make your marriage far better? Be one that is not open with all of your feelings. Be a bit guarded, so that eventually, the long term, strategically, you will be able to be open. You will be able to share more of your heart. But right now, it's not safe. He doesn't deserve it. And I say doesn't deserve it, but maybe it's just you've hurt him and he's responding in hurt. That's usually how it goes. You both are hurt and you respond in a way that hurt people. I don't know if you've heard that quote. Hurt people. Okay? So, a lot of times men, they respond in anger. And you're like, he's not hurt, he's angry. He doesn't know how to, he's got anger issues. That's how a lot of women perceive their husband's emotions. And I agree with you, he's angry. But the thing that's covering up the anger, the thing that anger is covering up is hurt. Because men don't have a lot of emotions that are manly. They don't have the gamut that women have the opportunity to have. For women, we essentially are a woman no matter what emotions we share. We can do pretty much any emotion and we're still, quote, a woman. No one thinks that we're strange if we have a crying fit somewhere or whatever. And I've had those. I'm not saying it judgmentally, but I'm still a woman. That's not ever a question. But for a man, oh my gosh, if he's too emotional, he's not really a man. I mean, that's the kind of thing our culture teaches, is that men don't get emotional. And if they do, it's very rare. Like, that's what our culture teaches. So if a man isn't allowed to be hurt, if he's not allowed to show his weakness, why then he covers it up with anger. Because that is an acceptable emotion for men. They're allowed to be angry. But hurt, they're not, quote, allowed to be in our society. They're not allowed to look weak. That's one of the worst things a man can look or feel, is like they're weak, like they're not good enough. And it's so pervasive that your husband has never been taught language for emotions. He's probably never been taught what emotional words actually are and how that links to his own feelings. I hear from men all the time, and they say things like, you've helped me articulate things I didn't even know about myself. I was going to read this part to you. Let me see if I can bring it up. The recent email that I received, I was grateful. One thing that he said is, he said, I have to tell you that each and every podcast you put out is incredible. Every time I think I've heard the best podcast you could possibly record, you drop another one that moves me deeply, that gives voice to things about me that I barely was aware of myself, if I was even aware of at all, that lays things out so clearly and so concisely that I find myself wondering how I could not have seen it myself. It is because you have a gift, or you are just a very good study. Anyway, I just mention those things because men, so often, I hear that a lot. I hear it a lot, that men don't even realize until I describe what they're going through. They're like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. And I hear that kind of stuff. I hear that, you're a man in a woman's body, or you can, how are you? It's freaky that you're inside my head. So I just want to encourage you, women, that he doesn't necessarily know his own emotional experience. So you're responding to emotions that he doesn't even understand himself. But you do, because you've always had the opportunity to learn about your emotions. You've always had the opportunity to have language about your emotions. And he hasn't. He hasn't even had the freedom to have emotions, much less describe them, or articulate them, and understand what to do with them. All that to say is that there's truly no excuse for the anger that he is responding with. I'm not saying that you need to suddenly be a doormat, that you need to suddenly, let him walk all over you, have no boundaries. That's not what I'm saying. But what you do need to do is be strategic. Guard your heart. When something hurts you, you respectfully say ouch and you leave the room. You don't turn it into a huge federal case where you're describing all these things to him. What you need to do is understand it. The wisdom I'm sharing in this podcast, you need to understand where he's coming from. You need to give him grace, but you need to get out of the situation so he doesn't continue to hurt you. That's called guarding your heart. That's called treating yourself like the queen that you deserve to be treated, because you teach people how to treat you. If you are not treating yourself like royalty, no one else is going to treat you like that. It's like, oh, she doesn't care if I walk all over her. I'm going to walk all over her. So you're strategic. You're kind, you're complimentary of the really good things, but you also guard your heart. And you don't share your emotions. You don't share your heart. You don't share the things that are really going on for you. And when you get hurt, specifically, he says something to you that's very hurtful, you say, ouch, and you leave the room and you do something that you would like to do, something that's going to make you happy. And maybe you've got to call a friend to cry and go through a lot of the negativity that you're feeling, the hurt feelings, all of that. You've got to call a friend. But listen, this is an investment in the long term so that you're going to bring your marriage from a 2 or a 3 to an 8, 9, and 10. So don't sacrifice now for the joy of later. Like what you need to do, I think I'm saying that wrong. Don't sacrifice the future for the very minor satisfaction you're going to get by telling him off. That's going to uproot the future joy and bliss that God wants for you in your marriage. So ultimately, you can do God's will better. I want you to have that vision, because once you have peace and connection and unity in your marriage, you really can get on board with God's vision. Then you're praying together. Then you're reading God's word together. Then you're serving each other, loving each other, helping each other in ministries and supporting each other. But don't feel the shoulds now and sacrifice that amazing future because right now you're putting the pressure on your marriage. You need wisdom. And I love telling the story of Esther. I love that story because it shows very specifically how she was willing to have timing right. She was willing to witness, to observe the king. She was willing to observe him and the ways he functions and the ways that she would actually have favor with the king of the land, who had so much power that he could literally kill her just by not putting his scepter out for her or whatever. And so, and literally her life was at stake. And, I don't know if it was hundreds of thousands, but many, many Israelites their lives were at stake if she wasn't successful in convincing him. So that was a ton of pressure. Maybe you're feeling pressure that you have to address whatever you're dealing with right now. There's that pressure. But Esther didn't bow to that pressure. She had her visions set higher. And she was strategic. She devised a plan according to the nature of the king. So first off, she was incredibly respectful. She says, it's so funny when you read the, let me see if I can grab my Bible. Okay, so in the story, Esther stands in the inner court, in Esther 5:4, she says, when he extends his golden scepter and asks her if she can speak, and she goes, if it please the king, let the king and Haman come today and to a feast that I have prepared for the king. And then the king said, bring Haman quickly so that we may do as Esther has asked. So the king and Haman came to the feast that Esther had prepared. And as they were drinking wine after the feast, so of course she waits after the feast, he's been drinking wine. Obviously they've been enjoying themselves. And then the king says, what is your wish? He says to Esther, what is your wish? It shall be granted you. And what is your request? Even to half the kingdom, it shall be fulfilled. And Esther could have been thinking, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the moment. God has even given me favor, so much so that the king has offered half of his kingdom. And this is actually the second time the king mentioned, in verse 3, he actually said when he saw her in the inner court, he said, what is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you, even to half my kingdom. So she could have jumped at it and been like, oh my gosh, God gave me this opportunity. It must mean that I need to share everything right now. But she didn't do that. It says, then Esther answered, my wish and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my wish and fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come to the feast that I will prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do as the king has said. So like Esther, oh my gosh, talk about someone who understands the king. Like, she was not willing to trade timing for the pressure that she was feeling. And you may be feeling pressure because you feel so hurt and so desperate. So every glimmer of like, oh my gosh, he might be open to hearing the horrible things that he's done to me, or he might, respond to me accusing him of cheating, or he might respond to me confronting him about the pornography. Like, okay, but I would say pray, consider timing, get wisdom, because just so you know, a cheater does not want to be confronted. It causes him to be on the defense. It doesn't to draw him in and seduce him in. So just as a quick note there, there's so much strategy you can have. There's so much you can do if you want to save your marriage. But if you want it to end because of the hurt you're going through, I get it. I'm not saying you're not hurt, but I am saying if you want to be strategic to draw him back, then confrontation like that is generally not helpful. Generally, you might have heard it help sometimes, but generally that's what ends the marriage, is a big confrontation. It's more likely that a husband will change when the wife changes, and he himself is convicted of the sin. There's a lot more I could talk about that, but I'm not going to right now. So then what happens is the next night, let me find that. So the king and Haman went to, so this is Esther 7, 13, or 15. So, 7:1, sorry. So the king and Haman went into the feast with Queen Esther. And on the second day, as they were drinking wine after the feast, the king again said to Esther, "What is your wish, Queen Esther? It shall be granted you. And what is your request? Even to the half of my kingdom, and it shall be fulfilled." All right, so I have one more thing to say, is that, think about it. The king and Esther are married. The king and Esther had dinner together, and then they drank wine. What do you think happened after that? They made love. And that changes a man's heart. He literally falls in love with who he witnesses when he makes love. I mean, that's why pornography, the addiction, is so huge, is because it's a chemical addiction. So the potential of actually being addicted to your wife is so wonderful when she makes generous love. So if you think about, Esther was so wise to see, oh my gosh, if I give him not only one feast, fully respectful, you'll even notice Esther throws in all these respectful phrases that it's like, Esther, just get to the point. If it may please the king, if I have found favor in your eyes, you're just like, Esther, just say it. But no, she realizes that respect is more important than direct communication, concise, getting to the point. And she realizes sex is so vital for her king, for her husband to feel connected with her, to feel favor with her. She recognizes that. So she in no way is missing the point of how and who her husband is. Sex. That's what they did. They made love. And then the second day, she speaks to him again in such respect. And once again, is wise about the timing. So then he says to her again, "What is your wish, Queen Esther? It shall be granted you. And what is your request? Even to half of my kingdom, it shall be fulfilled." And then Queen Esther answered, if I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be granted me for my wish and for my people, for my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. If we had been sold merely as slaves, men and women, I would have been silent, for our affliction is not to be compared with the loss to the king. Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther, who is he and where is he who has dared to do this? And Esther said, a foe and enemy, this wicked Haman. And then Haman was terrified before the king and queen. So that's the way it was done. And even when she did reveal what was going on, she was so respectful. And she didn't say, you have not protected us. You have done X, Y, and Z. You have allowed this edict to go out. I mean, she could have started accusing the king of doing all these terrible things, which if I were her, I would have been tempted to do. You know, the king is supposed to be the king. He's supposed to not let someone annihilate most of the population or a whole people group. I mean, that would be, you would think, kind of King 101, right? But that's not what she does. She doesn't come in with accusations. She comes in with a very passive voice. And I encourage you, don't accuse your husband. As much as you can, don't say the word you when you address him about something that hurt or some challenge you're going through. See if you can make it passive. Because think about it again, the way she speaks. If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be granted me for my wish and my people, for my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. If we have been sold merely as slaves, men and women, I would have been silent, for our affliction is not to be compared with the loss to the king. And so in all that, she says, we have been... What was it? She says, we have been sold, and I, my people, to be destroyed. She's not saying, you are going to destroy my people. She's saying, for we have been sold, we're going to be annihilated. And so that's completely this other respectful, non-accusatory way of speaking. So once again, she was very perceptive who her husband was. She was wise. She didn't take it lightly. She easily could have stomped right in there and, been really forward with the king. People tell me all the time, I'm direct. I'm just being honest. I'm like, yeah, how's that doing for you? No, you need to understand the intimacy, the respect, the love between the two of you. That's what's going to get you guys into the zone of 9 and 10. So don't be open with all of your feelings. Perceive where you guys are. Perceive and move towards the better way. And be wise, my dear. Be wise. Don't wear your heart on your sleeve. Protect that heart. Protect that heart so that you're filled up and you can approach the situation with wisdom so that, you're not being hurt all the time and you're doing something that makes you happy and you're, have girlfriends that support you so that when you do need to approach with wisdom and to find favor in your husband's eyes, that is going to transform your situation. Forcing him to change is maybe, if it is helpful at all, will be short-lived. But attracting him, inviting him, in attracting him towards yourself is very, very different. Very, very different. All right, my dear, I'm so grateful that he got a chance to listen. Let me pray for you. Father, I believe that the wife that tuned in here needed to hear this. whatever she's going through in her life, wherever she is in the world. By God's grace, thank you for bringing people to this podcast in so many different places around the world. I just ask God that what needed to sink in deep for her would, that she would attract her husband, even towards you, Lord. It's so exciting to know that you get glory out of this ministry. And I pray, God, if her husband is not a believer, she would be able to attract him to you. She wouldn't feel the pressure that so often we feel of, okay, he's got to start coming to church with me immediately, so I've got to put pressure on him, and it just doesn't work. It repels him away from the whole experience. But God, I pray that she would have wisdom and know how to find favor in her husband's sight, and to realize, you know what? If she's not sure about approaching a topic, she can always wait. She can always wait. If she's not sure right now is the right timing, she can always wait. Esther was patient, even with immense pressure. And she could have thought that now was the time, because he literally asked her 2 times before she actually said anything. But she was wise at the time. She was wise about who her husband was, who she knew him to be. And I just pray for these wives. Lord, they might be going through hell right now. Oh God, but give them wisdom and give them the discipline, Lord, that they would suffer the pain of discipline instead of suffering the pain of regret. In Jesus' name, Lord, amen. I'm so grateful that you joined me. And if this is something that you need, if you're saying, Bella, I am at a 0, I'm at a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, wherever you are in your marriage, we need others to help us along, to encourage us, to give us that other perspective, that wisdom, even a sisterhood, a body of women that can come together, and you can have the safety to share the real details, the real difficulties in your marriage and in your intimacy. I encourage you, there's a space out there for that. My program is literally, I've never heard of a program like that, where you have not only the mentorship, not only the wisdom, but also the support, literally every single day, for you to walk this thing out. So I would love to get on that call with you, or a member of my team, to uncover, could this be the right possibility for you? Could this transform things for you, for your marriage? And no matter what, after the 40 minutes of discovering what's going on for your marriage, no matter what, you're going to have amazing value. You're going to have amazing opportunity to kind of look more objectively on what's going on with someone who's trained to help you with that. All right. Well, God bless you. I'm so grateful that you joined in today. And I'm just praying for you that things would turn around for you and your marriage in a really wonderful, God-honoring way. God bless you. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. If you've been blessed by this, why not share it? Until next time, live with love, wisdom, and passion.